January 1, 1944. The skies over Germany. Major General James Jimmy Doolittle stands in front of 60 fighter group commanders at an airfield in England. What he's about to say will either wren the air war or get thousands of American pilots killed. Gentlemen, Doolittle says, his voice steady, forget everything you've been taught. Forget about staying with the bombers. The room goes silent. These men have been trained for one mission: protect the B-17As and B-24s at all costs. Never leave the bombers. It's the sacred rule of daylight bombing strategy. Doolittle continues, from today, you will actively own destroy German fighters. You will chase them to their airfields. You will strafe them on the ground. You will hunt them relentlessly until the Luftwaffe ceases to exist. One colonel stands up. Sir, that's suicide. The Germans will slaughter our bombers. Doolittle stares at him. Maybe. But I'd rather lose bombers now than lose THI-SCOR-AR. His superiors call it reckless. His subordinates call it madness. But in just EKS, this mad strategy will break the back of the Luftwaffe and change aerial warfare forever. This is the story of the most controversial decision of World War II, as air campaign. To understand why Doolittle's order was so shocking, we need to go back. Late 1943. The Allied bombing campaign over Germany is BLEDNG. The United States Army Air Forces has been conducting daylight precision bombing raids since August 1942. The theory is beautiful, elegant, WRNG. Heavy bombers, B-17 flying fortresses and B-24 liberators, fly in massive formations bristling with 50 caliber machine guns. They're supposed to defend themselves through sheer firepower. The bomber will always get through. The doctrine promises. General Reich, commander of the 8th Air Force, believes this. So does General Hap Arnold back in Washington. American bombers don't need fighter escorts for the entire mission. The P-47 Thunderbolts and P-38 Lightnings can escort them partway, but their range is limited. The bombers will handle the rest themselves. Except they can't. October 14, 1943. The second Schweinfurt raid. 291 B-17 flying fortresses take off to bomb ball-bearing factories deep in southern Germany. It's a critical target. Ball bearings are essential for German tank and aircraft production. Destroy the factories, cripple the German war machine. The math is simple. The P-47 escorts turn back at the German border. Their fuel tanks are nearly empty. The bombers continue on into German airspace. What happens next is a massacre. German fighter pilots have been waiting for this moment. Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Foch, Wolf F-190s attack in coordinated waves. Not from behind where the bombers have the most defensive guns, but from HE-aid. On. They dive straight at the formations, at over 400 miles per hour, cannons blazing, then break away before the bomber gunners can track them. Lieutenant Robert Rosenthal pilots a B-17 called Rosie's Riveters through the gauntlet. He watches helplessly as German fighters tear his formation to pieces. One B-17 explodes in a massive fireball. Another breaks in half. A third spirals down trailing smoke and screaming crewmen. They were EVRIWHERE. Rosenthal later recalls. You'd see a 109 coming straight at you, growing larger in the windscreen. You knew he was firing, but you couldn't do anything except hold formation and pray his aim was off. The bomber gunners fire back desperately. Thousands of .50 caliber rounds fill the sky, but hitting a fighter moving at 400 miles per hour in a head on pass requires IMPOS-IBLE marksmanship. The closing speed is nearly 600 miles per hour. The engagement window, 3 seconds. Maybe 4. Of the 291 B-17s that took off that morning, 60 are shot down. Sykes TY. Another 17 are so badly damaged they'll never fly again. That's a loss rate of 26% in a CNGLE mission. 600 American airmen are dead, wounded, or captured. General Eaker looks at the casualty reports and realizes the truth. The Americans are lossigned the air war. At this rate, the 8th Air Force will be destroyed before it can seriously damage German industry. Something has to change. But what? Enter Jimmy Doolittle. The man is already a legend. In April 1942, he led 16 B-25 bombers on a one-way mission to bomb Tokyo, the famous Doolittle raid that shocked Japan and lifted American morale after Pearl Harbor. He's a pilot's pilot, a racing champion, an engineer with a doctorate from MIT, and he understands air combat in ways the strategic bombing theorists never will. In December 1943, Doolittle takes command of the 8th Air Force, replacing Eaker. His boss, General Carl II Spaatz, gives him a clear mission. Prepare for the invasion of Europe. Day is coming in 1944. And Allied troops cannot land on French beaches, while the Luftwaffe controls the skies. The German Air Force must be destroyed before the invasion begins. Doolittle studies the problem. The numbers are brutal. Germany has approximately 400 fighters defending the Reich. The Luftwaffe is producing 1,000 new fighters per. American losses are unsustainable. The current strategy of attrition, trading bombers for fighters, favors Germany because they're fighting over their own territory. Shot down German pilots who survive can return to combat within days. Shot down American pilots, prisoners of war or dead. But Doolittle sees something everyone else has missed. The P-51 Mustang has just entered service in significant numbers. This fighter has a combat radius of 650 miles with drop tanks. That means it can escort bombers THEY to Berlin and back. For the first time, American fighters can engage the Luftwaffe over German territory. The question is, should those fighters be used? The standing doctrine says they must stay glued to the bomber formations, provide close escort, react defensively to German attacks, never pursue, never abandon the bombers. Doolittle thinks this is Einansen. You can't win a war by defending, he tells his staff. You win by attacking, by taking the fight to the enemy. He proposes something radical. Let the fighters hunt. When German fighters appear, American fighters should pursue them aggressively, chase them back to their airfields, strafe them on the ground, destroy the Luftwaffe not just in the air, but at its SOURCE. His staff is our RFID. General, if we leave the bombers undefended, the Germans will massacre them. Doolittle's response is cold logic. Right now, German fighters are attacking our bombers at times and places of our choosing. They hit us when we're most vulnerable, then disengage before we can respond. My way, we choose when and where to fight. We force THEM to react to US. But there's a darker calculation beneath the strategy. Doolittle knows that freed from close escort duties, his fighters will shoot down more German aircraft. And here's the key. Germany has plenty of aircraft. What Germany is running LOW on is experienced pilots. The Luftwaffe has been fighting continuously since 1939. Poland, France, Britain, North Africa. The Eastern Front. Their veteran pilots are exhausted, and their training program can't produce replacements fast enough. American pilot training. 6 months of intensive instruction before combat deployment. German training by late 1943. Reduced to just a few weeks because Germany desperately needs pilots. At the front. These inexperienced German pilots are lamb to the slaughter against combat. Hardened Americans in superior aircraft. Doolittle's strategy is designed to kill German pilots, not just shoot down planes. Kill pilots. Force them into combat again and again until the Luftwaffe's pilot corps is desterrado. It's ruthless. Brutal. And it might just work. On January 1st, 1944, Doolittle issues the order that will become known as the Fighter Pilot's Freedom. His commanders are split. Some think it's brilliant. Others think it's suicide. Colonel Hubert Hub Zemk of the 56th Fighter Group is skeptical. General, we've trained our entire lives to protect those bombers. You're asking us to abandon them. Doolittle nods. I'm asking you to win this war, and you can't win by playing defense. The first test comes on January 11th, 1944. A massive raid on German aircraft factories. Over 600 bombers escorted by nearly 500 fighters, including the new P-51 Mustangs. As the formation crosses into Germany, Luftwaffe fighters rise to meet them. In the past, American fighters would have stayed tight with the bombers, waiting for Germans to attack. Not today. Captain Don Gentile of the 4th Fighter Group spots a formation of Fock Wolf Fu-190s climbing toward the bombers. Under the old rules, he would maintain position and wait. Under Doolittle's new orders, he ATACKS. Horseback leader. This is Horseback Blue 1. Bandits at 10 o'clock climbing. I'm engaging. Gentile rolls his P-51 into a steep dive. His 3 wingmen following. They hit the German formation like a hammer. The Fu-190s, caught by surprise, scatter. Gentile locks onto one, closest to 200 yards, and fires a 2-second burst. The German fighter explodes. His wingman gets another. The remaining Germans dive away at full throttle, abandoning their intercept of the bombers. All across the formation, American fighters are pursuing German aircraft instead of waiting for them. The psychological effect is IMMDI, ATE. German pilots who expected defensive American tactics are suddenly fighting for their LIVs. Instead of choosing when to attack, they're forced to evade and defend. The initiative has shifted. But Doolittle's strategy has a second component that's even more controversial: ground attack. He orders his fighters to strafe German airfields on the way home, when they still have ammunition and fuel. Hit the Luftwaffe on the ground, where aircraft are most vulnerable. Many pilots hate this order. Strafing is dangerous use. Airfields are defended by flak guns, anti-aircraft artillery that fires thousands of explosive shells. Flying low and slow to strafe parked aircraft makes you an easy target. The casualty rate for ground attack missions is BRA-U-AL. But Doolittle is adamant. Every German plane we destroy on the ground is one less plane shooting at our bombers, and every German pilot who dies scrambling to his aircraft is one less pilot we face tomorrow. January 29, 1944. Captain John Meyer of the 352nd Fighter Group is escorting bombers back from Frankfurt when he spots a German airfield near Bonn. 30 or 40 aircraft are visible on the ground. Under the old rules, Meyer would fly past and head home, Under Doolittle's new doctrine, he ATACKS. Meyer dives his P-51 toward the airfield, his finger on the trigger. At 200 feet altitude, he opens fire. His 6.50 caliber machine guns, 3 in each wing, fire 200 rounds per minute each. That's 120 rounds per second, tearing into parked German aircraft. Messerschmitts and Fock, Wolf's explode as incendiary rounds ignite fuel tanks. Within 10 seconds, Meyer destroys 4 aircraft on the ground. Then, the flak opens up. German 20 mm and 37 mm anti-aircraft guns fill the sky with explosive shells. Meyer's P-51 shudders as fragments pepper the fuselage. His left wing takes a hit. Smoke pours from the engine. He's -YB 5 seconds from being blown out of the sky. Meyer pulls up hard, banking away from the airfield at full throttle. His engine is overheating. Oil pressure dropping. He nurses the damaged Mustang back across the Rhine. Crash, lands in Allied territory, and walks away. 4 German aircraft destroyed. 1 American fighter damaged. The math favours America, but Meyer nearly died making that run. This is the bargain Doolittle is asking his pilots to make. February 1944, big week. This is the operation that will prove or destroy Doolittle's strategy. The plan is audacious. 6 days of maximum effort bombing. Raids against German aircraft production facilities. Every available bomber and fighter, wave after wave, force the Luftwaffe into battle and destroy. February 20th. Day 1. Over 1,000 American bombers strike targets across Germany, escorted by 800 fighters. The Luftwaffe rises to meet them with everything they have. What follows is the largest air battle in history up to that point. Over the cities of Leipzig, Brunswick, and Tutow. Nearly 3,000 aircraft clash in a battle that sprawls across 200 miles of German airspace. Lieutenant Urban Ben Drew of the 361st Fighter Group is flying his P-51 at 25,000 feet when he spots a formation of German Me-110 twin-engine fighters attacking a bomber group. Under the old doctrine, Drew would have stayed with his assigned bombers. Under Doolittle's orders, he pairs UES. Drew dives on the Me-110s, achieving surprise. He shoots down TWO in quick succession. A third tries to evade, but Drew follows him through a series of violent maneuvers and fires a deflection shot that severs the German fighter's tail. 3 kills in less than 2 minutes. But the cost is high. The bombers Drew left to pursue those kills. They're hit by a no-SER wave of German fighters. 3 B-17s go down. Is this what Doolittle predicted? Trading bombers to kill fighters. The crews of those downed B-17s, 30 men dead or captured, might disagree with the strategy. Yet the numbers tell a different story. On February 20th alone, the Luftwaffe loses 127 aircraft destroyed. American losses: 21 bombers, 4 fighters. That's a kill ratio of better than 5-1 in America's favour. And more importantly, the Luftwaffe loses 39 pilots, key ILED. These aren't planes that can be replaced. These are pilots with hundreds of hours of combat experience. Day 2, February 21st. The Americans strike again. Over 900 bombers, 700 fighters. The Germans scramble everything that can fly. Young pilots with barely 30 hours of flight time climb into Messerschmitts and Fock Wolfs to face American aces with hundreds of combat missions. It's not a battle. It's a cell AGHDR. Major Walter Beckham of the 353rd Fighter Group shoots down 50 German fighters in a single mission. Captain Bud Anderson gets 4. Lieutenant Colonel Francis Gabreski claims 3. The stories repeat across the formations. Experienced American pilots in superior aircraft massacring inexperienced Germans in planes that, while excellent, can't overcome the skill gap. Oberleutnant Heinz Noak, a Luftwaffe veteran with 33 victories, watches helplessly as his squadron is decimated. Their EVER we do HERE. He writes in his diary that night, "The Americans have more fighters than we have pilots. We scramble 12 aircraft. Only 7 return. And the new pilots, they last 1 mission. Maybe 2. Then they're dead. This is exactly what Doolittle predicted. The Luftwaffe is being bled dry. Not just of aircraft. German factories are still producing fighters at high rates. But of pilots, the irreplaceable human capital that takes years to train and develop. Day 3. February 22nd. The weather over Germany is marginal. Clouds. Poor visibility. In the past, such weather would cancel missions. Not today. The bombers press on. So do the fighters. The Luftwaffe, exhausted from 2 days of continuous combat, can barely muster 200 fighters to oppose 1 Zausenop's Allied aircraft. American fighters hunt German aircraft like wolves. Some Luftwaffe pilots simply refuse to take off. They know they're facing death. Hauptmann Herbert Illefeld, a Luftwaffe ace with 123 victories, confronts his squadron commander. "Herr Major, we cannot continue. My pilots are Fenicidie. They're flying 3-4 missions per day. They haven't slept in 48 hours. The Americans destroyed 7 of our aircraft on the ground yesterday. Even. We can't even protect our own airfields anymore." His commander has no answer. The strategy Illefeld describes. That's Doolittle's plan war KNG. Relentless pressure. No respite. Hunt the Germans everywhere. In the air, on the ground, in their beds if possible. Break their will to fight. Day 4. February 23rd. American losses spike. The Luftwaffe, fighting desperately to defend German soil, launches coordinated attacks against the bomber streams. They're using a new tactic. Massed formations of heavily armed F-1 190s attacking from head, on in groups of 30 or 40 aircraft. These storm groups absorb horrific casualties, but they SURT the bombers. 11 B-17s go down in a single attack near Brunswick. Doolittle's critics seize on this. Say, "We tell you. Leave the bombers undefended and the Germans slaughter them." But Doolittle examines the data. Yes, 11 bombers were lost. But American fighters pursuing German fighters shot down 52 enemy aircraft that day. And more critically, the German storm groups lost 40% of their pilots. VAR-CNT. That's not sustainable for ANI Air Force. Day 5. February 24th. The Germans are reeling. Luftwaffe fighters barely contest the American raids. Not because they don't want to fight, but because they physically can't. Pilot exhaustion. Aircraft losses. Fuel shortages. The cumulative effect of 5 days of maximum effort combat has broken on them. Captain Don Gentile, the same pilot who led one of the first offensive sweeps in January, leads his squadron deep into Germany hunting for targets. They find a German airfield near Celle. 30 aircraft on the ground. Gentile gives the order. "Horseback squadron. We're going down. Follow me." They strafe the airfield in broad daylight. Flak bursts around them, but they press the attack. 22 German aircraft destroyed on the ground. 1 American P-51 damaged. The Luftwaffe loses more aircraft in 10 minutes than they can replace in a week. Day 6. February 25th. The final day of Big Week. The Americans fly over 300 sorties. The Luftwaffe. Fewer than 100 fighters rise to challenge them. It's not even close to a fair fight anymore. The Germans have been said. In 6 days of sustained combat, the Luftwaffe has lost over 450 fighters destroyed and nearly 300 pilots killed. That's 20% of their entire fighter force. Guin. And the pilot losses. Those are irrelentless. American losses for Big Week. 226 bombers, 28 fighters. Terrible numbers. Over 2,000 American airmen killed or captured. But the strategic calculation favors America. The US can replace those losses in 2 weeks. Germany. The aircraft maybe. The pilots, never. Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, commander of the Luftwaffe, rages at his staff. How is this possible? We have the finest fighters in the world. Our pilots are brave. Yet the Americans destroy us at will. Nobody has a good answer. The truth is too painful. Doolittle has outplayed them. By changing the rules from defensive escort to offensive hunting, he's turned every engagement into a battle of attrition that Germany cannot win. But Doolittle isn't finished. March 1944. He escalates. Not content with hunting German fighters in the air and on airfields, he orders attacks on German pilot training schools. Strafe the fields where student pilots practice. Force Germany to disperse training operations. Make it harder for Germany to replace lost pilots. This is controversial even among Doolittle's own commanders. Colonel Donald Blakesley of the 4th Fighter Group. Objects. Sir, these are student pilots. Kids learning to fly. This isn't combat, it's murder. Doolittle's response is cold sea. Every student we kill today is one less ace killing our bombers tomorrow. This is war, Colonel. Win or die. March 6, 1944. The first major raid on Berlin. Over 700 bombers strike the German capital, escorted by nearly 800 fighters, including P-51 Mustangs. This is the mission everyone has been waiting for. Berlin. The heart of Nazi Germany. If American fighters can escort bombers to Berlin and Reich, it proves the Luftwaffe has lost control of German airspace. Major James Howard of the 356th Fighter Group becomes separated from his squadron during the mission. He finds himself l'ROE escorting an entire bomber group, 36 B-17s, as German fighters swarm to attack. Under any rational calculation, Howard should disengage and head home. 1 P-51 against 30 German fighters. Suicide. Howard attacks and Abai. For over 30 minutes, he single-handedly defends the bomber formation. He dives on German fighters as they line up attack runs. He fires, breaks away, climbs, dives again. His ammunition runs out. He makes DRY PES SES. Flying at German fighters without firing, using bluff and aggression to break up their attacks. Against all odds, the bomber formation survives intact. Howard's P-51 is shot full of holes, but he makes it back to England. He becomes the ONLY fighter pilot in the European theatre to receive the Medal of Honor. But more importantly, his mission demonstrates what Doolittle's strategy has created. American fighter pilots so confident, so aggressive, so determined that a single pilot will take on impossible odds, rather than cede airspace to the Luftwaffe. March and April 1944 become a bloodbath for German fighter pilots. Every mission sees American fighters ranging freely across German skies. They strafe trains. They attack ground vehicles. They hunt German fighters relentlessly. The Luftwaffe's loss rate spikes to over 25% per MONTH. At this rate, the entire German fighter force will be destroyed within 4 months. Desperate. Germany recalls experienced pilots from the Eastern Front. These men have been fighting Russians for years. They're GOD. But even they can't turn the tide. There are simply too many American fighters with too much fuel, flying too aggressively. Major Erich Hartmann, who will become the highest scoring ace in history with 352 victories, transfers from the Eastern Front to defend Germany in April 1944. After his first mission against American bombers, he requests immediate transfer BACK to Russia. When asked why, his answer is blunt. The Russians we can beat. The Americans. There are too many of them, and they're too well trained. Fighting them is suicide. By late April 1944, the transformation is complete. The Luftwaffe, which began 1944 as a formidable force of nearly 400 fighters, has been reduced to fewer than 500 operational aircraft. Worse, pilot quality has helplessly. The average German fighter pilot now has less than 100 hours of flight time. American pilots, over 400 hours before their first combat mission. D-Day, June 6, 1944. Allied troops land on Normandy beaches. The Luftwaffe flies exactly 319 sorties over the invasion beaches on D-Day. The Allied air forces fly over 14,000. German fighter pilots who appear are swarmed by Allied fighters and destroyed. The Luftwaffe is IRR-Ent. Feldmarschall Erwin Rommel, commanding German forces in France, watches helplessly as Allied aircraft dominate the skies. He writes to his wife, "The enemy has total air superiority. We cannot move by day without being attacked from the air. Our fighters are nowhere to be seen. I fear we have lost this war. Doolittle's strategy, controversial, brutal, expensive, has wowed. In just 21 weeks from his January 1st order to D-Day, the Luftwaffe has been destroyed as an effective fighting force. Not eliminated entirely, but broken. Unable to contest Allied air superiority. Unable to protect German ground forces. Unable to defend German cities from strategic bombing. The statistics tell the story. January to June 1944. Luftwaffe losses exceed 400 fighter aircraft destroyed and over 1,000 pilots killed. American losses: approximately 800 fighters and 500 bomber crew casualties. The exchange rate heavily favors America because American pilots who bail out over Allied territory retio Uren. To Karem 80. German pilots who survive being shot down. They're out of the war. But there's a human cost that statistics don't capture. Lieutenant William Lawley of the 364th Bomb Squadron typifies the sacrifice. On February 20th, the first day of Big Week, his B-17 is hit by German fighters. His co-pilot is killed instantly. Lawley himself takes shrapnel to the face, blinding him in one eye. The aircraft is on fire, controls shot away, barely flyable. Lawley refuses to bail out. 8 of his crew are wounded. He manages to keep the burning B-17 in the air for over 90 minutes, nursing it back across Germany and the English Channel. He lands in England. 6 crew members survive because Lawley refused to abandon them. He receives the Medal of Honor, but his co-pilot, Lieutenant Paul Murphy, age 23, is buried in an English cemetery. This is the real cost of Doolittle's strategy. Yes, it worked strategically. Yes, it destroyed the Luftwaffe. But real men, American, British, German, died to achieve that victory. Doolittle never shies away from this reality. In his memoirs, he writes, "War is killing. We killed them faster and more efficiently than they killed us." That's victory. But it's not something to celebrate. It's something to mourn. German pilots who survived the war speak of 1944 with a mixture of horror and respect. Adolf Galland, who became General of Fighters for the Luftwaffe, later writes, "We were fighting the most well-trained, well-equipped, and aggressive fighter force the world had ever seen. And we lost, not because we lacked courage, but because we were simply overwhelmed. The technical superiority of American aircraft played a role. The P-51 Mustang was arguably the finest fighter of World War II. Range 1, 650 miles with drop tanks. Top speed 437 mph. Service ceiling 41's 900 feet. It could outfly, outclimb, and outdive virtually anything Germany produced. But technology alone didn't win the battle. Statue did. Doolittle understood something fundamental. Air superiority isn't achieved by defending. It's achieved by attacking, by taking the initiative, by forcing your enemy to react to you, rather than choosing when and where to fight. This principle remains central to air combat doctrine today. Modern fighter pilots learn Doolittle's lessons. Aggression wins. Defense loses. Compare Doolittle's strategy to modern air warfare. The 1991 Gulf War began with Allied fighters conducting deep strikes against Iraqi air defenses and airfields. NOF escort missions. Offensive operations designed to destroy Iraqi air power at its source. The result: total air supremacy achieved in 48 hours. Doolittle would have recognized the strategy immediately. It's AS strategy, proven again 50 years later. The cost-benefit analysis of Doolittle's approach remains controversial among historians. Some argue he sacrificed too many bomber crews by pulling fighters away from close escort. They point to missions like Schweinfurt, where inadequate fighter protection led to catastrophic losses. Others counter that Doolittle's aggressive strategy started the war by destroying the Luftwaffe's ability to fight, ultimately saving lives by hastening victory. The truth probably lies between these extremes. Doolittle made a calculated gamble. Accept higher short-term losses to achieve long-term strategic victory. The gamble wore KD, but real men died as a result. That's the burden of command. Making decisions where both choices involve death, and picking the option that kills fewer people overall. After the war, Doolittle meets with surviving German fighter commanders, including Galland and G.U. Nentheroll. The conversations are respectful, even friendly. One German pilot asks Doolittle, "Did you know how many of us you were killing with your strategy?" Doolittle pauses before answering, "Yes. That was the point. Not the killing itself, but breaking your ability to fight back. I'm sorry it had to be that way. But it did." The legacy of Doolittle's decision extends far beyond World War II. His aggressive fighter doctrine becomes the foundation of modern air combat tactics. Every fighter pilot since 1944 learns the same lessons: seize initiative, attack aggressively, never cede control of the battle space to the enemy. Defensive operations are necessary, sometimes, but they don't win wars. Offense wins wars. The destruction of the Luftwaffe also had profound strategic consequences. With German air superiority gone, Allied ground forces could advance across France, Belgium, and into Germany itself with air support. German armies, constantly attacked from above, couldn't maneuver effectively. The Wehrmacht, which conquered Europe between 1939 and 1941, became a defensive force trying desperately to hold territory against overwhelming Allied air power. Some historians argue that Doolittle's victory over the Luftwaffe shortened World War II by 6 months to a year. That's speculative, of course. But it's undeniable that Day could not have succeeded without Allied air supremacy, and Allied air supremacy was achieved through Doolittle's controversial strategy of aggressive fighter operations. Today, Jimmy Doolittle is remembered primarily for the 1942 Tokyo raid. It's a dramatic story. Bombers launching from an aircraft carrier to strike the Japanese homeland. And it deserves recognition. But his GREATR contribution to Allied victory was his January 1944 decision to unleash American fighters. That decision, more than any single action, destroyed the Luftwaffe and enabled Allied victory in Europe. The men who flew those missions, Americans like Don Gentile, Hub Zenk, Francis Gabreski, and thousands of others whose names aren't remembered, paid the price for Doolittle's strategy. Over 26,000 American airmen died in the European theatre. Many of them died because they were ordered to aggressively attack German positions. Rather than play it safe, they followed orders. They trusted their commanders. And they wob you on. The German pilots deserve recognition too. Men like Adolf Galland, Werner Emil Loders, and Erich Hartmann fought courageously for a regime that didn't deserve their loyalty. They were skilled aviators caught on the wrong side of history. Many died defending their homeland from strategic bombing that killed hundreds of thousands of German civilians. Their sacrifice doesn't justify Nazi Germany, but it deserves acknowledgement. They were warriors who fought bravely even in a losing cause. War is not glorious. It's not exciting. It's young men dying in burning aircraft at 25,000 feet. It's families receiving telegrams informing them their sons won't be coming home. It's the permanent cost of temporary victories. Doolittle understood this better than most. He never glorified his decisions. He simply made them, accepted the consequences, and lived with the burden. If you found this story compelling, consider what it teaches us about leadership, strategy, and the terrible calculus of war. Sometimes the mad decision is actually the san one. Sometimes conventional wisdom is wrong. Sometimes you have to be willing to accept higher costs in the short term to achieve victory in the long term. That's what Doolittle did. That's why he's remembered not just as a hero, but as one of the finest strategic minds in military history. Subscribe to this channel for more untold stories from World War II. Next week, we're covering Operation Market Garden, Montgomery's disastrous attempt to end the war by Christmas 1944. You won't want to miss it. Leave a comment below. What other World War II strategic decisions should we analyze? What battles, commanders, or campaigns deserve deeper examination? Your suggestions drive our content. And remember Doolittle's lesson. In war as in life, playing defense doesn't win. Aggression, initiative, and the willingness to accept risk, those are what achieve victory. The Germans learned that lesson the hard way in the skies over Europe in 1944. Thanks for watching.